Very good. Welcome everybody. Welcome back. My name's Jnanavaca, for those of you who don't know me. And I'm going to continue talking about aspects of the Tantric path, Tantric Buddhism. Where Subhadramati and I have been looking at symbols from Tantric Buddhism and exploring the significance of the symbols. So in a way, we're not giving you anything like an overview, not even an overview of Tantric Buddhism. We're just picking a few symbols and exploring them, making them, seeing how they're relevant to us. And today, the symbol that I'm particularly going to be looking at is this vase on the shrine here. Can you see at the back? It's tiny. I'm not going to pass it round. It's a precious sacred object, particularly to do with our order. It's an initiation vase, and I want to talk about initiation. Initiation is not common, not just something that's common in Buddhism. It's there in all sorts of religious and non-religious societies. And maybe we'll say a little bit about that. We'll explore that a bit. But then I particularly want to look at initiation. Hi, come on in. Within this particular spiritual community, within Triratna. Yeah. So, initiation. What sort of connotations does that word have for you? Particularly, say, within a sort of spiritual context. Because it could just mean starting something. But I don't mean that. I mean a bit more than that. Betrothal. So in what way is it like a betrothal?
Because by seeking initiation and then doing what's necessary to be offered it and then going through it, and often there's at least a symbolic ordeal of some description.
Yeah.
You are sort of symbolically formalising your commitment to that path.
That's right. That's exactly it. So what two things that you've mentioned there, an ordeal and a commitment. They're really good things that I think we should explore more. Ordeal and commitment. So I'm going to explore those. Tell me your name? Matt, yes. Ordeal and commitment. Anything else that strikes you about that word?
That you are passed on sort of the secrets of profound spiritual practice.
Yeah, something sort of esoteric and secret is passed on in a spiritual initiation. Like famously, the Masons have, I don't know if they still do it, but you have to roll up a trouser leg or something, don't you? If you're a man and being initiated. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I'm not a Mason, and probably you don't. But yes, there's something secret. You don't really know what. For the non-initiated, it's not revealed. It's only revealed to the initiate and to those that have undergone the same initiation. And so not only is it secret, but something is passed on, something esoteric is passed on. Yeah, that's really good. Anything else? Yeah?
Transformation from one state to another.
Right.
Often maybe from it's kind of the state you transform into might be unimaginable to the state.
To the state that you were, yeah, a transformation from one state to another. I guess in traditional societies, men and women are when they reach a certain age are initiated into adulthood. Yeah. Say that again. A rite of passage. That's right, and it's a transformation from a ritual transformation that marks a transition from one state of being to another state of being, like a rite of passage. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so in that sense, it's quite permanent. There's no going back.
There's no going back. That's right. So commitment, permanence, it's life-changing, a transition from one state of being to another, a rite of passage, which also has connotations of an ordeal, something difficult, maybe even dangerous, something secret, and maybe esoteric is passed on. All of them are really good connotations that spring from this word initiation.
Is maybe something mythical or
Yes.
something that happens in another plane that is not the
Mm.
material world or the
Yeah.
world we inhabit?
Yeah, something mythical, that's something that indicates something happening on another level, another plane, that isn't just to do with the material world that we inhabit. That's right. It's, in a way, ritual is, all ritual, I think, is sort of, or at least sacred ritual, not just when you sing happy birthday to somebody. Well, that can be sacred, but what I'm thinking in religious terms, spiritual terms. Rituals are happening on this plane with material objects. You know, we might do a puja together and we'll chant and recite verses, but they're pointing to, or they're enacting something going on a more secret, higher, esoteric level, yeah, transcendental level in Buddhism. So something else is going on. So that's really, really good. In a way, I could just leave it there and say, there you go. You've sort of given the talk for me. In Triratna, in this context, our main initiation well, maybe our only real sort of initiation that covers all of those aspects is ordination. Before ordination, you do have a step. You can make a commitment before ordination in becoming a Mitra. So who's a Mitra here? Yeah, so quite a number of you. So when somebody becomes a Mitra, well, would one of the Mitras like to tell us? Who would like to tell us? What have you done when you became a Mitra? No. We should have got to you before then, didn't we? No, that's interesting actually, because what you're, I don't want to be flippant. Well, I was flippant, but anyway, I don't mean to be. I can explain at one level what becoming a Mitra is, but what you're, I think, implying is that something else goes on that is an inner experience that still has to be processed. Yeah. So at the outer level, it's fairly straightforward to understand what becoming a Mitra is. Becoming a Mitra means that you're publicly declaring that you're a Buddhist, that you are practicing Buddhism in your life, you're able to practice the Dharma in your life. In particular, you're able to practice the 5 ethical precepts in your life, or you're trying to practice those. They're open-ended, those precepts, so nobody's perfect at practicing them, apart from a Buddha, I guess, but that you're trying to put those precepts, you're taking it seriously, the ethical principles, but you're also exploring the Dharma more, you're open to learning about the Dharma, and that you want to learn and explore within this spiritual community, this particular context called Triratna, because there are other, obviously, Buddhist groups that you could choose to explore in, yeah? So a Mitra is somebody that's said they're a Buddhist, they feel themselves to be a Buddhist, they're trying to practice the principles of Buddhism actually in their life, and they want to explore more in this context of Triratna, in this particular Sangha. Yeah? So that's a Mitra. So that's a sort of commitment, isn't it? It's a sort of statement, but it's not an initiation. Although we do have a ritual that goes with it, and there is something that is sparked off in us when we make this statement. Ritual has a magic to it. I know sometimes you may not feel that. If you've done a Buddhist ritual, you might think, oh, nothing much is going on. But if you engage with it seriously, it has a sort of it changes you. It has an effect on you. And when you become a Mitra, the ritual's very simple. You make an offering of a flower, a candle, and a stick of incense to the shrine. You bow, and then you take your place again. But in doing that, you're saying the 3 jewels are important to you, and you want to explore them further. You want to make them real. And when you do that, and you do it ritually, and you do it publicly, something happens. It sort of starts to become more serious. But that's still not an initiation in the full sense of the word. That, it's not like an ordeal. Well, it might be, but it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be a definite lifelong commitment, although it might turn into one. It's not meant to be. It's a sort of somewhere between a sort of non-ritual affirmation of Buddhism and ordination. Yeah. It's a sort of halfway point. So ordination is what I particularly want to talk about, because that's initiation in the full sense of the word. And in our community, if you're a Mitra, for example, if you've already said that you think you're a Buddhist and you're practicing, you can, if you want to, you have to ask for ordination. Nobody gives you it if you don't ask for it. Yeah. So you have to ask, and you have to ask repeatedly. In fact, over and over and over again, over years, because we don't want to just sort of ordain people if they're not serious about what they're asking for. So in our tradition, you have to ask for ordination, and your ordination request will be accepted. You'll be taken seriously. It'll be like, oh yes, you definitely have asked, but you're not going to then be allowed to join the order just because you've asked, until you're seen as ready. Yeah, until you're seen as ready to make that commitment. And in between the asking and the actual ordination, there's normally a number of years of training. Yeah, a number of years of training, and the number of years depend on you and your individual circumstances and how quickly you're able to make that commitment. And the training involves all sorts of things, which we can or can't. Well, we'll see. You can go into if you want to, but it normally takes a number of years. Yeah, and then at some point, order members who know you, people who have already been initiated, who have made that commitment, order members who know you well and can see that you're ready to make that commitment, will invite you to be ordained. And even then you can say no. Yeah. And in the ritual itself, which I'll say a little bit about, you have to ask again. So the person ordaining you will say, do you want to be ordained? In fact, they won't say that. You have to ritually ask again. This time, in the middle of the ritual, you say, please ordain me. Please give me the vows. Please give me the precepts. And then they will. So it has to be an individual act. That differs, doesn't it, from a traditional society where I was thinking, I was talking earlier and I was saying that in a traditional society, boys and girls, when they reach a particular age, might have some sort of ritual initiation into adulthood. Yeah, those boys and girls probably don't have a choice. Yeah, in some traditional societies, boys are circumcised at some age. Yeah, they don't have a choice. That's their initiation into adulthood. Triratna, it's difficult to join the order, but you have to make that choice individually. Nobody's going to force you into it. Yeah, so it's individual. So that's very important. But it is a commitment. So let's explore this word commitment, betrothal. I like that, actually. You won't end up marrying anybody, but there is something of the seriousness of that. It's a lifelong commitment. So why is commitment important? Why is commitment in any sphere of life important? Yes.
Because if you don't have commitment, then when it feels difficult, you're inclined not to continue with that particular path.
Yes, that's right. Did everybody hear that? Yeah? When the going gets tough, tell me your name.
The tough get going.
The tough get going, that's right.
Leia?
Leia, that's right. Sorry, I'm rubbish with names. I know some of your names and forget them. Yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it? That sounds like a bit threatening, isn't it? Anyway, I'm sure you didn't mean it like that. So, no, Leia's quite right that unless we've made a commitment, when it gets difficult, we're likely to find an easy way out. Yeah, that's one value of actually sort of saying, nailing your colours to the mast and saying no. I'm not going to just walk out when it's difficult. That's part of the. I know. People do walk out of marriages and things, but when you actually get married, you're not saying, "Oh, I'll stay with you unless it gets really hard." You're actually ritually saying, "I'm going to stay with you through thick and thin." Yeah. Any other notions of or connotations of the word commitment? Why is it important?
It's like a bond.
Ah, that's interesting.
Or something greater.
And a bond with some others or something great. And what's the importance of that? You're right, I think.
I suppose it's a kind of our interconnectedness. Yeah.
Yes. Why is it important to have commitment? Say that again? Communion? You have faith. Yes, you have faith. That's right. Say a bit more.
If you're committed to something, it's in my mind anyway, it means you believe that there's something greater that you can't really see, that you're fighting for, that you're willing to do a lot.
Okay, yes. You have faith in some sort of ideal that you're going to commit to. And the reason I think faith is kind of necessary is that when you make a commitment, if it's a commitment to an ideal anyway, when you make a commitment, you don't know what the future's going to hold. You don't know what that commitment will mean. So you're stepping into the unknown, and therefore you're doing it on the basis of shraddha, of some sort of degree of faith. It doesn't mean that you're doing it blindly. Hopefully you've thought about it, you've investigated it, you've reasoned, you've had enough experience to know that this is what you want to do. But nevertheless, there's an unknown. There's an unknown element, which is part of the risk. Commitment is not risk-free. It's not safe. It's not safe. I like that it's not safe. Joining the order in Triratna is definitely not safe. If you want a safe life, do not ask for ordination. And if you have asked for ordination and you think you want safety, well, think again. Safety, Buddhism actually, at whatever level you want to practice it, will not make you safe. Yeah. Sometimes we think that Buddhism is going to offer some sort of, if I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, everything will work out for me. I used to think that. And in a way, I can understand why one would think that, because life does sometimes we grow and we're able to handle life better if we practice. On the other hand, life doesn't always work out. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is that samsara is dukkha, which means that it's unsatisfactory. Things fall apart, things go wrong. In the end, there is loss and death, and that's unavoidable. Buddhism's saying, no, You can't avoid that. Going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha doesn't make samsara safe. It makes you able to face up to life and handle better whatever comes your way. Yeah. So it's not safe. It does therefore require faith. It's not free of risk. If we don't make a definite commitment wholeheartedly, we're more likely to walk away when it's difficult. All of those things are true. There's something else that happens, which I think you were alluding to, Steph, possibly, is that when you commit, particularly if you commit to a spiritual path, if it's a genuine spiritual path, I believe that you get help to tread the path. It's almost as if it's a genuine spiritual path. I think it's like the universe responds and you get some help to grow. Not necessarily, you don't get necessarily what you want. It doesn't mean that you wish for a bike and you get a new bike. It's not quite like that, or a car or whatever it is. It's not that. It's more that you get, if you're on a path of growth and you commit to it, you'll get what you need to grow and the support that you need to grow. I think that, I wouldn't want to put, I can't prove that. It's my experience, and that's based on my own experience, but also on faith. Who would agree with that, though? See if, yeah. Who wouldn't agree with that? You're not sure. And you're definitely saying no. Would anybody who doesn't agree with that like to say why? Yeah. Do you understand?
Well, thanks for asking. I think it's complicated, right? Because commitment is just a word. But from my opinion, commitment could be a form of conditioned existence. For example, I can be very committed to go to the gym or to do exercise, but that is not necessarily favorable for me. If the underlying reasons of doing that commitment, there are fears and desires
Of course.
that must be purified.
That's really good, actually. That's a very good thing. So you can commit to all sorts of things out of all sorts of motives. Not always are those motives pure and unselfish. Some of those motives that we commit things that we commit, some of the projects, but also some of the motives with which we make a commitment are not necessarily altruistic or pure. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, it's a very, very good point. I think in the Dharma life, if you make a commitment, to the degree that your motives are not pure, it will be difficult. It will be quite difficult for you. To the degree that your motives are genuinely aligned to wanting to transcend your limitations and grow and help others and serve, to that degree, I think you get help. So, but I can't prove that to you. I think it's one of those mysterious things where you have to see if it's true for you. Part of the training between asking for ordination and being invited to be ordained is a purification of motive. It's an understanding of what that commitment is, but also a purification, because sometimes people think, I want to be ordained because I want a fancy name. Yeah? And I want to be up here teaching like Jnanavaca teaches. And one of these things is quite nice too. And then everybody will look up to me and respect me and da-da-da-da. Now, to the degree that one's motivations is like that, there's more purification needed, yeah? And the training process is partly designed to help you purify your motives, help you learn what it is that you'd be committing to. Nevertheless, it's still possible to get ordained and have some mixed motives. And then to that degree, it's difficult after ordination. Yeah. Let me just read you something, though, that William Hutchinson Murray says about commitment. It's a passage that I first read Bhante quote, and I really, really like it. So William Hutchinson Murray is also quoting Goethe, yeah? And sometimes this whole quote is ascribed to Goethe, although I don't think it was. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative or creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favour all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no one could have dreamt would have come their way. I have learnt a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. This is Goethe now, whatever you can do or dream, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Isn't that wonderful? So you might think, oh, that's kind of naive. But I think there's truth in it, that if you really commit and your motives are pure, some doors open for you. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy, but until you commit, you don't know that. I think one of the dangers of our culture, there are lots of them, but one of the dangers is that commitment has become a dirty word. What's seen as really precious is freedom, isn't it? Freedom to choose anything that I want to do. I don't know, in the past, maybe 100 years ago, maybe less than 100 years ago, most people weren't free to choose what they did with their lives. If you're a woman, you were probably expected to stay at home and get married and have kids and run the household. If you're a man, you were probably expected to go to work and do what your dad had done. Or do you know what I mean? And most people weren't free to say, oh, shall I study art history or shall I go down the mines? It wasn't like that. You just went down the mines if that's what your dad had done. Most people stayed in the same job for life if they had a job. Or if they didn't have a job, they didn't expect to get one. Do you know what I mean? They didn't have much choice in their life. So one of the wonderful things that's happened, I think, in our modern times is that people do have choice. And I like that. I like the fact that I can choose what I want to do with my life. And I sort of wouldn't want to go back to the time when people didn't have a choice. But one of the dangers of having a choice about everything, is that we never have to commit. And if we don't commit, we stay on the surface of what we're doing. I know this for myself. 18 months ago, I decided I wanted to learn the piano. Nico bought me a wonderful, probably very expensive online course in learning the keyboard. Oh dear, for the last year, I haven't opened it. But it does sit there somewhere in my room it pricks my conscience sometimes, and I think, oh, I wanted to do this. Why haven't I done this? And do you see, one remains, because it's hard, isn't it? learning a new musical instrument is hard, particularly as an adult. It's hard enough as a child, but as an adult, it's really hard. You know, my fingers have not used to doing what I'm meant to. Yeah. Anyway, it's hard. It requires work, and part of the thing about having a life where I can do anything is that I may not, if you're my temperament, I may not do something that's hard work. And then I remain on the surface of things. And, you know, you become my age and you think, oh, I could have done this. I could have learned loads of languages. I could have, you know, learned loads of musical instruments. I could have travelled. I could have done... But you don't. You just sort of stay relatively superficial. Does that make sense? Yeah. So part of the trouble with choice is that if we think that we want to hang on to our freedom at all costs, then we'll never commit to anything. Because commitment means narrowing freedom. It means giving up on something. It means choosing one thing to really focus on, which means not choosing others. Yeah? So that's hard in our culture. And I think part of what we're seeing in our culture is more and more stimulation of the senses, more and more information, more and more, you know, I can just sign on and look at YouTube any moment of the day without having to actually commit to anything. It keeps us superficial. Yes, John?
I was going to say, maybe it's not actually choice as a point, maybe it's too many choices.
Yes, I think that's right. I don't
know if it's a good example, but
I think
so many products.
Yeah. Exactly, millions of choices about everything. I think it's an excess of choice. I wouldn't like to say when choice as a good thing turns into choice as a excess. We've got to navigate that ourselves. On the other hand, I think we do need to bear in mind that if we're going to do something worthwhile with our lives, whatever age we are, that will require focus and commitment. It will mean choosing and then sticking with something. And if you do that, I think something does open up. Anyway, ordination, when you're ordained, you definitely are making a commitment, and you're saying that I will put Buddhism at the heart of my life. In fact, Buddhism by that stage is at the heart of your life. The Buddha, Dharma and Sangha are at the core of your motives, they're everything that you're trying to orientate your life around. Everything is revolving around the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. They're the most important, precious things in your life. And everything else is around that, arranged around that in a mandala. So that's quite a thing to say. And what's more, you're saying that you'll, as far as you can, you'll stay true to that for the rest of your life. And actually, I think ordination has implications for beyond this life, for lifetimes. So there's something very, very significant about saying that, about anything, let alone the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Yeah. So my own ordination, I've just wanted to touch on that. I was ordained about 20 years ago, and I was invited to be ordained in India, which was a bit unusual. Various circumstances conspired to make that happen. I wasn't expecting that, so I didn't also get very much warning. Sometimes people get a lot of notice, like maybe even up to a year. But I didn't. I had about 2 months' notice, and I was told you can be ordained, but you have to go to India and go on a retreat there. And at the end of that retreat, which was a 10-day retreat, you can be ordained. And I went, and I was terrified, absolutely terrified. It was like, not only was ordination frightening enough, but then I was in this completely unknown environment where I didn't really know anybody, and I didn't speak the language, and it was demanding. It was demanding in all sorts of ways. From material ways, like I don't eat chili. I'm Indian, but I don't eat hot food. I can't eat hot food. So I couldn't eat most of the food. So that was pretty demanding. And then it was Nagpur, or just outside Nagpur. It was, a couple of hours outside Nagpur. And it was January. And in the night, it was cold. It was really, really cold. And I really don't like cold. And we were sleeping. There were 6 of us being ordained and 6 men being ordained. And we were in a sort of dorm. Well, it wasn't a dorm. It was a concrete building with no real glass in the windows. And we didn't have any bedding. When I say no bedding, I mean no bedding. So no mattresses, no pillows, no blankets, no anything. Yeah. In India, it wasn't like they were deliberately trying to be cruel or anything, although they might have been actually, I don't know. In India, people are quite used to just sleeping on the floor a lot of the time. I wasn't, yeah. So I can remember I had one jumper with me, and that was, I wanted to wear it, but I also wanted a pillow. So anyway, I had to kind of choose whether I had a jumper on me at night or a pillow. And then I was cold. There was no hot water. There was no Indian toilets are Indian toilets, and you have to really get used to that. So not only could I not eat, everything was just really weird. That was quite. And then the retreat, the pujas and everything were in Hindi. Most of the retreatants could only speak Hindi or Marathi, and I could speak neither. So I was on retreat with a lot of people who I couldn't communicate with, including the people that I was going to be ordained with. Delightful people, though. We would often sit and they'd say, let's talk. And I'd sort of think, and somehow we'd communicate in Pidgin Marathi or Hindi and Pidgin English. We'd communicate and tell each other our life stories, and there would be this bond of love between strangers. It was really magical. Anyway, the ordination consists of 2 parts. Our ordination. So there's a private ceremony where you go into a space with the person you're going to be ordained. The person who's ordaining you, they're already sitting there, and they perform a ritual. You take part in a ritual ceremony, and during that ritual, nobody else is there, and it's sort of secret what happens in that ritual, so I'm not going to tell you. But one of the things that happens is that you give up your old identity, and you're no longer the person you were anymore. And that's symbolized by you being given a new name. So now, from now on, you have a new name. And you don't choose your name, you're given it. So you have no choice in the matter. So I was called Jnanavaca, and that's when I first heard that. And then a few days later, in my case 2 days later, there's another part to the ordination, which is a more public ceremony. And in the public ceremony, you're welcomed into the order. So in the public ceremony, I was given this as a symbol of my ordination. That was put around my neck by my preceptor. And in my public ordination, it was very, very public. Most people's public ordinations aren't that public. Mine had between 5,000 and 10,000 members of the public show up. It was a public holiday, and so they all came with picnic baskets, or what the Indian equivalent of, and watched me and my 5 other order brothers get ordained. I was made to feel like a king. Ordination in India, they were all extremely pleased and proud even though they didn't know what I was doing or who I was. Ordination counted for something. I can remember being asked to hold a baby, somebody's baby, so that you could take photographs. And so I would bless the baby. I mean, thousands of people, every person wanted to shake my hand, give me a hug, congratulate me. It was surreal. It was completely surreal and completely fantastic. So that doesn't happen at every ordination, but it sort of happened at mine. During the public ordination, you're ritually purified. And this vase is used, or a vase very similar to this one. And it's got sacred holy water in, I guess like you would have in the Christian tradition. And some drops of water are poured onto your head. And symbolically it's said that those drops of water enter through the crown of your head, down the meridian nerve, and for the rest of your life they purify you. Not passively, you have to actually work at purification, but they'll support that purification. It's very, very beautiful ritual. And I can remember people sort of, as the water was being poured, it's quite a sort of comic kind of thing, you know, because it can go down your head, etc. But I can remember people were, well, I was very, very moved by that. It did feel like something very, very significant happened at that moment. It's like I entered into something of a different dimension. And then, of course, you're given this kesa, and your name is announced to the world. So I just want to draw out three kind of principles about initiation, and particularly as it relates to ordination. So the first thing is that there's a trial. There's a trial. In my case, there were physical trials, but even if, like, you have a bed and food that you can eat, there's a trial. There's a renunciative element. You're going to go into the unknown. You do sort of go into the darkness on your own, metaphorically. So you have to leave behind the world, otherwise you're not going to make a commitment, a spiritual commitment. You have to leave behind the known, and it's scary. Yeah. So there's a trial. The second stage, which is represented particularly by the private ordination, is that you, having sort of renounced outer things, comforts and the known, you then renounce your identity. You say, I give up my old self. There's an inner surrendering. It's a death. It's a spiritual death. And you're left not knowing who you are. You're left in this liminal, in-between state where you've let go of your old identity, and yet you haven't yet taken up a new identity. So you're in no man's land, no woman's land. You're in this bardo, in this intermediate state, which is a challenging place to be. It's a challenging place to be, and a really valuable place to be. It's where you really don't know who you are anymore, and everything that you've identified with is not really relevant anymore, even your name. And then the third stage is that you're welcomed into a community. You've made the transition into this new stage of life, and there's a celebration welcoming you. You've undergone the ordeal and the trial, and now you're welcomed and you can be welcomed because you've made a commitment. Yeah, and it's a sacred bond that you've committed, which means that you're no longer the person you were. You're now an initiate, and the outer symbol of that is the kesa, so that people know that you're initiated in our system, and of course the name, which is more maybe even more profound, because the name is saying this is now you, and you're going to have to work out what that means. Who are you? You're going to have to work that out probably over lifetimes. So I think that's very beautiful. And I think our secular world lacks initiation. I know that we make up initiations, like you reach the age of 18, or you lose your virginity, or what other sort of initiations do we have? You pass a driving test, you graduate. Any others?
Your first joint.
Your first joint, yeah, your first joint. Your first drug experience. Thank you for that. No, that's great. Yeah, your first joint. Go on.
PhD.
You're a PhD, so an academic kind of.
You're given a name, aren't you?
Say that again?
You're given a name.
When?
Initiating you into this life is giving you a name.
That's right. But as an adult, we don't have so. As an adult, you normally, unless you get another name. Yeah. I think as a baby, it's not quite an initiation in this sense, because you didn't kind of choose it, and you didn't necessarily have a trial, and we're not conscious at that stage. Yeah.
But maybe even in baptisms, it's for the baby, but it's initiation for the adults, for the godparents.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess initiation could be about the collective rather than just the individual.
Yes, it can be. But in Buddhism, it's definitely about the individual. It's definitely about the individual. But I was thinking more in terms of our secular society. Well, we've had your first joint. I like that. Thank you. And well, maybe I've said some of those other things. In secular society, I think that those initiations are. I'm not saying they're not important, but then they don't carry the same transformative significance that a spiritual initiation can do. They don't necessarily carry the same weight. I know that graduating, passing your driving test can be... Sorry? Getting married. Now that is probably, in secular society, the sort of main commitment that somebody might make in their life. You said betrothal, Matt, to start off with. So I think that's the closest most people come. Maybe becoming a parent is another sort of transformative, life-changing thing that you can never go back from. Yeah?
And all they do is pass the cigars around.
Who do?
The gents.
Yeah, that's right.
Having not gone through the ordeal.
Having not gone through the ordeal, yeah. Me neither. Yeah, go on.
Getting a job and a title.
Getting a job and a title, that's right. That's what a lot of us kind of do in our secular culture. And a lot is made of titles, isn't it? Particularly, I mean, it might be like that now here, but in America, you're always a vice president of something. Everybody's like a vice president of, president of something. And titles mean a lot in that sense, yeah.
It's not just talent, it's professions, isn't it? So chartered accountant.
Oh yes, you can. Yes, you qualify. You qualify as a.
That's the big tangible one.
Yeah, that's a big tangible one. If you've got a professional qualification, you qualify, and all of those things. So secular society does have secular equivalents, and they are important. They're life stages for us. I'm not trying to sort of say they're not important. All I'm saying is that a spiritual initiation, an ordination, has another dimension to it, which is more difficult to talk about, and it's saying something, I think, about it's a commitment not to something tangible in this world. It's a commitment to something transcendent. I guess that's what spiritual life is about, whatever religion you're from. It's a commitment to something transcendental that you're then going to try and work out in this world, in everyday form and life. And that is, there's a magic to that. There's a magic to that. I think what's happened in our secular world is that transcendent dimension, that magical, mythical dimension, has often been leached. It's often leached away. It's often actually been sort of sent away, dismissed. Not always, but often, so that even marriage isn't necessarily a sacred thing anymore. Yeah, it can be, but it isn't. So I think we yearn for, most of us, for significance at another level. We yearn for the sacred, and I think we yearn for initiation into something sacred. I'm not saying, by the way, that you should all get ordained. I'm just trying to say that in Triratna, this is our main initiatory ritual. I wouldn't advise you to get ordained unless you really, really want to. Unless you feel like it's a calling that you sort of have to. I wouldn't necessarily advise it. You can completely practice the Dharma without being ordained. It's fine to practice the Dharma without being ordained. It's just that for me, when I came along, I can only speak personally, I was interested in, well, you said it, something esoteric. I wanted that magic. I wanted that to be passed on. I wanted enlightenment. I wanted to understand the truth of something beyond this world. And I had a sense that that was what life was truly about. So from that perspective, I wanted to be ordained. Because at ordination, you're also introduced to practices, meditation practices that orientate you towards enlightenment. That puts it too prosaically. You're introduced to a Buddha or a Bodhisattva figure that then becomes your guide to enlightenment and in a way personifies who you will be when you become enlightened. There's magic that's evoked, and I believe that's the strongest part of the ordination. Again, I can't prove it. All I can say is that my experience was that magic happened, and it was like something entered into me that was subtle, but changed the orientation of my life. And I'm still working out what I did that day 20 years ago when I ritually accepted this ordination. For the last time I asked, and then I was accepted, and I had to accept it. I'm still working out because it's still playing itself out. I haven't figured it out. It's not something that you ever get to the end of. But I wouldn't do it if you don't really want that. If you don't want something that's going to change your life. If you don't necessarily want something that's transcendent, or you don't believe in that's possible, then in a way it would be easier not to get ordained, because it is a trial. It's a trial before ordination, and it's also a trial after ordination. It's not an easy path, and it's not safe. If, though, you do feel that enlightenment is what you're aiming for, that you're not settling for anything less than Buddhahood, that you do believe that there's a transcendent dimension that's calling you, that in a way you won't be fulfilled without responding to that call. If you feel that, then ordination might be for you. it might be that another context is right for you. It might not be in Triratna. It might be in some other movement, some other Buddhist movement, maybe. All I'd say is that if you do have that sort of urge in you, listen to it. And whether it's in Triratna or somewhere else, try and stay true to it. It's so easy to get distracted by more worldly calls and voices and pulls. But this, if you sense that it's the most meaningful thing that you can do, then I'd urge you to listen to that. And if you don't, then I'd urge you to not worry about it. Yeah? And have a good life. Use Buddhism in whatever way you can. You don't have to get ordained, in a sense. Yeah. We've probably got time for maybe one more question, and then we'll have to wrap up.
What does your name mean?
My name, it can be translated in various ways, but when I was given it, it was given as the voice of wisdom. So jnana is wisdom, the wisdom of the Buddhas, and vacha is speech or voice. So it's given to me as voice, the voice of wisdom, which I was quite embarrassed about. For when I was given it, I thought, oh my goodness, every time I open my mouth, somebody is going to say, oh, there speaks the voice of wisdom. But I soon realized that the names are also aspirational. They're, all of the names that order members are given have some sort of aspirational quality, and if I really became the voice of wisdom, I would be enlightened, and I'm not. So it becomes a symbol for what I could be. Does that make sense? And what my path in life. It's a symbol for the goal, for the ideal, and each name is individual and personal. So yes, in a way, that's what I aspire to be one day. Is Jnanavaca, and until that time, I sort of wear the name as a reminder to me, if not to anybody else, of what I'm trying to do with my life. Yeah. So I'd like us to finish with a mantra then, and. In a way, during the mantra, I'll lead us in the Shakyamuni mantra. Just connect with what you feel is most important in your life, that you're willing to commit to, that you're willing to make a commitment to. Now, the mantra is, of course, the mantra of the Buddha, and so it's saying, look, Buddhism is the highest ideal. But if in a way, don't worry about that. Just see if you can, during the mantra, sort of get in touch with what you want to commit to, or have committed to in your life.